Right, Dr. Jerry Gule and Siyabulela Xuza, welcome to the African Tech Roundup.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andile.
I'm going to start with a question for you, Dr. Gule. I'd love to be a fly on the wall of the boardrooms of a place like Total, given what's happening in the world, the uncertainty around oil volatility. What sort of difficult conversations are you having here around innovation and its role in answering some of the questions that are being asked of the world at the moment?
I would say that some of the difficult issues, of course, that we have to face is that no one expected the kind of economic environment that we have today. So that does bring a lot of conversation around, okay, so what does the future hold? But in terms of, the oil industry, the oil sector, as it were, is a highly capital-intensive sector. So when you look at projects are not just short-term, projects are for a long time. So the investments are long-drawn. And when you do an investment like Total, the Total Group has done over the years, we have the most modern refinery now in Saudi Arabia, which is a joint venture with that particular state. That was a huge investment. So, and obviously, when you invest, you want to look at the return. So, the question right now is around return on investment. What projects can be undertaken in the light of the current situation, which is obviously for an oil major is a very difficult situation. Calls for introspection and where we should be going with things. Yes.
And so, there's a very romantic tale that's available readily on the internet around, your emergence as a young scientist, Sia. Okay, so he's correcting me with this one. The difference between a scientist and an engineer before we carry on.
An engineer applies what scientists invent or discover.
Okay, so you wouldn't consider yourself a scientist?
Well, I'm an engineer by qualification and by passion and by profession. So, all due respect to scientists, but it is not what I am. I am an engineer.
Okay, well, I'll let the scientists take that up with you. Clearly, I'm not sure if is that shade?
No. I said all due respect to scientists. It's just that if you are what you are, I'm an engineer, and so by qualification, and that's who I am.
All right. Well, we'll reel that in then. So a young engineer got his start messing around with rocket fuel. And here you are sitting across the table from a very large player within the global oil industry. What's this partnership about? What's your vision in terms of applying the skills you've acquired through experience and through scholastically, and in partnership with a large player like this? What's the big idea here?
My vision, Andile, currently only 24% of sub-Saharan Africans have access to electricity. Firstly. Secondly, only less than 10% of the economically active population in Africa are entrepreneurs versus almost 25% in China. So my vision is essentially combine my talents, right, as an innovator and apply them towards promoting entrepreneurship across Africa, as well as solving our energy crisis through innovation. That's essentially my vision.
And how are we doing this? How are you doing this?
So I can possibly take that question in the sense that you asked, what is the big picture? What is the vision that Total has, having Siya Xuza as our brand ambassador? We linked up because he's a young entrepreneur. He's looking to alternative energies. We are an energy company, and we felt there was a good fit in terms of what he wants to do, not only to promote and grow his company, establish his company in energy, but also our being on the continent and having been on the continent for a long time. In fact, now we are one of the only, if I may say, oil major outside South Africa that is present on the African continent, and we are there to stay. So our feeling is that with a young entrepreneur like Siyabonga, we could connect because we're also about growing entrepreneurs on the continent, and he's passionate about that. So we reeled them in, and we agreed. We find this partnership really working well in that we have offered the possibility of him talking to young Africans across areas where we operate. We haven't spoken to everyone on the continent, but speaking across the different areas of the continent, accessing youth to enthuse them, to excite them about what is possible, irrespective of where they come from.
And so correct me if I'm wrong, Sia, your research at Harvard was into renewable energy. Is that correct?
So really, my research was more specifically involved around fuel cells for energy storage, because I realized that, within energy, the big opportunity is not so much generation, but it's actually building the storage capacity. And it so happened that fuel cells are of interest in South Africa and across, in Southern Africa broadly, because of our abundance of platinum. And so I wanted to find ways of making more efficient fuel cells. And that's what my research was based on at Harvard and MIT.
I suppose the reason I asked my question is because the link isn't obvious. Where is the synergy between a legacy business that is rooted in oil and someone with a passion for creating new ways to create energy?
Great question. I think there are many synergies. Whilst I believe you are aware of their oil business, they also have probably one of the largest solar businesses in the world. And as you know, solar alternative technologies, it's where the world is heading. And so where the link is with me as an innovator within forward-looking energies, fuel cells, storage, solar cells, that's going to be the future of energy. And Total, being a very forward-looking company, brought me onto this. And that's essentially where the synergy is that, look, Total is operating across all African countries, the majority of African countries, at a time when many other multinational oil companies were pulling out. They had a commitment to Africa, and it was the same perception that I had when I decided to come back to Africa, because a typical trajectory, and you being a well-traveled millennial can relate, Andile, is that the brightest Africans leave Africa, do stellar things in America, and they stay in America, and that talent is retained there. And so we have this huge brain drain. And so at the same time that Total was deciding to reinvest and redouble its efforts to remaining relevant in the African continent, I decided to come back. And when I came back, we struck this partnership. We said, look, we want to speak to young people, because Andile, I couldn't sit back and say, wow, I've had an amazing journey, I've been given all these resources. I wanted to find a way to connect to people in Africa, so that I don't just become relevant in South Africa, but I can become relevant in Kenya, in Namibia, to African students all over, because as you're aware, there are 625 million young Africans between the ages of 15 and 25. If we don't seize that generation and engage them with entrepreneurship, engage them with innovation, that's a lost generation. But if we can seize those, Africa will truly fly. And that's what really brought this partnership in, because you find a lot of brand relationships and you can't really see that synergy. I was just using somebody because he's a famous face, but I really didn't come because I was not famous. In many ways, Total made me famous as a result of this, but it was that authentic alignment that we have, a passion for Africa, and more importantly, a passion towards alternative energies. And that's what really brought us together.
Let's talk about ways that this relationship could go past a meeting of the minds, past that to like doing serious business. I'm curious to know, you introduced Sia as an entrepreneur. Are we talking ideas that are going to be licensed, ways to actually translate good ideas into sustainable enterprise? Or are we still at the sort of level as a continent of just inspiring people to take science at high school?
Fantastic question. You have to walk the talk. Today, I'm the founder and CEO of Galactic Energy Ventures. The company is based in Benmore, opposite our new offices are based in Benmore, directly opposite there. And in partnership with the Department of Trade and Industry, we're moving ahead towards commercializing fuel cells. That is something that I've done, and through the support that Total have given me, giving me access to networks, I wouldn't have been able to do that. How many people below the age of 30, can we say, own companies are developing patents in Africa? But the challenges that I had to face of coming back to Africa with nothing, just a degree, and building a business out of nothing is a testament to say what is possible out there. So this is beyond us just inspiring. As one day, hopefully you can come and join us one of our talks. You'll notice that the message that I give is it's not a random message. I use my own story or use my own experiences of being an entrepreneur, because you have to walk the talk. And previous to becoming an entrepreneur, I had a breakthrough in micro fuel cells that could be used to power portable devices. That's something I dedicated my life to in 5 years. So this is more than just talking and all the fluff that you tend to hear. It's great that we have Africans excited about entrepreneurship, but at the end of the day, you have to deliver.
I suppose that's the challenge. A lot of the stuff we've heard about this partnership has been in maybe 5 or 6 minute sound bites, and I think they're questions people like me and many others have, and I'm grateful that you're answering them. This brings me to the next thing that we've heard about. We've seen the press releases. Total is putting up 1.2 million rand up for grabs. I think that was announced last year to award a great tech startup. What sort of tech startups are you interested in, and what's behind this initiative past it being great for PR?
As Siya has pointed out, and again, it's a great question you're asking, because we are really looking for traction. We cannot be doing things for PR only. It's okay to do things for PR, but it's beyond PR. So the 1.2 for South Africa, and I have to be specific, because the top 3 winners on this competition that we run, the Startup Challenge by Total, so we're running it in 34 countries on the continent. So if you imagine that in each of those countries, the average prize money that would be shared by the top 3, if you use euros, it's just over 30,000 euros. So in 34 countries times 30,000 euros, that's a bit significant. But for South Africa, I'm responsible for South Africa and Namibia. So those are my project areas. But what we're trying to do here, we're trying to excite young Africans to say, don't just go through the education system and think employment. Think establishing. If you have an idea, establishing your own company so that you can address issues of unemployment, underdevelopment. So that's really the objective. And Siya, in fact, on that particular project, I've told you that he's our brand ambassador, but we're also working with him in enthusing these young Africans around if they have ideas, don't be afraid to put your idea on the table. Because sometimes people self-edit and don't use the idea. So and this is only but year 1. Our vision is to run this particular project for the next 5 years. And of course, subject now to the oil price, because all these things cost money. So hopefully the oil price will come back to a level that is sustainable, that will enable us to do the things that we want to do. But we want to run this for the next couple of years. And eventually, our vision is, as Total, our vision is that maybe we establish a foundation. And we're a collaborative company. We're not working on this thing on our own. We work with people that are specialists in enterprise development. And we're doing this across the continent. So I want to stimulate not only the ideas from entrepreneurs, but even the institutions that are there to focus on how do we develop entrepreneurs and support them. That's the idea.
Further to that, there's a deep level of authenticity here. I mean, Andile, as a fellow African, as a young African like myself who's concerned about the future of Africa, doesn't it concern you that we've been too reliant as Africans on commodities? And what we're seeing right now with the fall in the commodity prices shaking up a lot of these economies, it's certainly given impetus for us, this young generation, to rise up and say, surely there has to be a different way of doing things through innovation. And secondly, the makeups and the equity structures and the ownership levels of our economies, don't you think that young people have a further voice to play in that? And that's really what we're trying to speak to over here. And it's beyond a PR opportunity. There's a deep level of authenticity that I want people to translate across. And, merely look at the state of Africa here today. I'm fortunate, and people like us are fortunate, that in some ways we can be considered to be outliers with our respective successes, but we do have a responsibility to speak to those issues.
Some of the frustrations we have in covering tech and innovation and digital across the continent is that very rarely does it translate into a long-term genuine commitment to making actual change. Now, I mean, everywhere you turn, you can throw a stone in any direction, you'll hit an incubator or a co-working space or a hackathon. We're sort of fatigued by it, and hence the question. It's just, let's be fair, big business is often not in a position to do what's necessary or prepared to do what's necessary. I mean, the banking industry and its kickback against fintech disruption and the telcos, its kickback against OTTs are testament to how, at the heart of it, we have to question the commitment of some of these legacy businesses to actually mean what they say and care about the greater good, as opposed to maintaining a status quo and satisfying shareholders.
It comes down to the mindset that we have to embrace as Africans. And I if I didn't believe that, collaborating with Total wouldn't allow me to, if we didn't have the shared mindset, firstly, because I'm very strong and I'm very principled into the initiatives that I do involve myself in. And this is more than just another incubator where you're just creating physical space and we're just trying to create this narrative, to romanticize entrepreneurship. That is certainly not that. Being an entrepreneur myself, I know the challenges that so many entrepreneurs face. And what we have to shift when we talk about entrepreneurship in Africa, we have to shift from this understanding of thinking the person who's only employing 3 people, the small, this microfinance, interpretation of social entrepreneurship. And we have to shift the need a little bit bigger. We have to be bigger in our aspirations, bigger to develop tech giants out of Africa that will scale the likes of, your American counterparts, because we can do that. We certainly do have the talent, but what was lacking in Africa, not just South Africa, was that enabling ecosystem. As you mentioned, incubators. But the problem is everybody's thinking in terms of a silo. Everybody thinks that I'm a bank, so all I do is finance. In universities think that, all we do is produce engineers. But if you go to America, you'll see how they've perfected this ecosystem. I myself, having spent 5 years at both between Harvard and MIT, one of the tech epicenters in the world, I saw tremendous value. And it starts off with having, because what a legacy company like Total has is that they've got scale, they've got presence. If you're an entrepreneur and you go onto their network, they immediately nudge you into over how many countries does Total?
We operate in over 130 countries around the world.
How many in Africa?
Africa, possibly 45 countries.
Now, let me give you an example. An entrepreneur came up with a solar lamp. They got it into the supply Total. What is it called, Dr. Gule?
A Wango lamp.
I think that is a classic case of an example of what a big legacy business, like Total has actually done.
I think I saw one in the lobby as I came in.
Yes, the Wango lamps are basically, and as Sia pointed out earlier, energy is one of our challenges on the continent. So, in as much as I don't want this particular phraseology, we were once known as the dark continent, and the youth can change that. It's young people like yourself, Andile, who will help us to change this, to make this a bright continent, because it is. That's why everybody today is thinking, if I'm not on the African continent, maybe I'm going to be missing out. That's why people are coming here. But Africans must drive the agenda. You must know what we want. And as Total, we're very proud that this continent has treated us very well. We have invested and we have gotten a return on investment, and we want to continue that. We want now with this, and this takes money, it takes effort, but we are committed to it to make sure that the continent that has been so good to us indeed rises. We support our partners, because wherever we operate, we want to partner with not just the state, but the communities in which you are, and to develop together. So I think we know that big business cannot exist without small business. And small business comes about because they've been entrepreneurs. So we must see this symbiotic relationship. And I think this is why Total has decided, we've done this for our dealers and everybody else, but now we just opened and said, any kind of the sector can participate in our competition. So it's not just tech, but all sectors of the economy can participate. If you find good ideas, gem of an idea that can change some aspect. I mean, part of what we're looking at, and people said, are you guys crazy? We're looking at import substitutions. If we find a business that can substitute, needs support, the idea is such that it can substitute some of the import that we bring here. Wonderful. That's what we're looking for. So we're looking for big ideas. And of course, we're looking for small ideas as well, because it starts from that and it can become big.
And so who are you hoping to hear from? And just drop a few details about how people can apply and where people can check out the terms and conditions of the competition.
The competition actually opened on the 1st of November and closed on the 31st of January. So, new people can now enter when we relaunch again, and we'll do the same announcement. But so it's based on the web. So you basically find all the information when you go to startup.total.com. And you'll find all the information there. But it will now, for the future, as this particular round is closed. We are now on the adjudication process.
Just coming back, and you mentioned in passing that you're a startup founder. And what is your sense of people's appetite for startups in quote unquote, the boring tech scene. What is your sense of people's enthusiasm for what it is you're doing?
People have always been enthusiastic about my journey per se, because my journey is really driven by passion. And I think as long as entrepreneurs, particularly the ones listening to, to this podcast over here, is that if you're truly passionate about what you do, then the world will align to support that interest. I think, entrepreneurs should never fall a victim of chasing the trend, so to say. Be authentic about who you are, what you stand for, pursue it with passion, and you'll be able to achieve success, more than you had imagined. And that's essentially, what brings me over here is that, the role of the patron could have gone to a lot of people. It could have gone to an older generational entrepreneur, but I was privileged that they chose me as a young person, as an entrepreneur in my own right, facing the same challenges, the same moments when you want to give up being an entrepreneur, the same moments of thinking, am I crazy for trying to build, an energy technology company in Africa when I had opportunities to be in Silicon Valley, having those daily dilemmas, and that's essentially why I decided to get involved in this role. But it has to start with passion.
So, gentlemen, the one last question I'd like to ask you involves you telling us what areas within technology, engineering, innovation, digital science even, what's exciting you right now? It might not necessarily be anything you're currently busy with. So it doesn't have to be petrochem in the case of you, Dr. Gule. It doesn't have to be what you studied at Harvard.
I think what excites me the most are the advances that we're seeing in neuroscience. As you're aware, people think that we only use 10% of our brain, right? And look at how much we've done only using 10%. Imagine if we had 20%, imagine if we had 33%, but the convergence of neuroscience with technologies such as neurofeedback therapy and advances in biochemistry that are allowing people to access, more capabilities of their brain is going to be very, very fascinating. But I think even closer to home, what we're seeing in the automotive industry right now, for the first time, we're starting to see technology playing a bigger role in terms of how the cars of the future are being made. What, Tesla is doing with their vehicles. I think that's an exciting part. I think outside of energy, outside of my interests, those would be my most exciting things. Three things really: neuroscience, the future of transportation, and artificial intelligence, robotics. And what will that mean? What will that mean for Africa? We have this reliance on trade unions, but that's going to shift our labor markets. What will robotics do? I mean, it's a very, very interesting discussion. As if you're following the World Economic Forum, or we're talking about the fourth industrial revolution, how is Africa going to be relevant in the fourth industrial revolution? Are we going to be left behind like we have been, or are we going to take the lead? It's up to us.
That's What would you say is tickling your fancy at the moment, Dr. Gule?
What is really tickling my fancy? A couple of things, but at the top of that is what is happening in medical science. I mean, some of the things that are coming out of there are just amazing. The fact that you can reproduce things, you can now stuff that we thought was only possible in fiction is now becoming a reality. So that's exciting. It's also scary because we are finding that the legal systems are not really geared up to deal with the new things that are the new developments. But it is exciting. It is scary at the same time to see, to wonder where is this actually going to end and what does it mean. So it's challenging some of our concepts, some of our beliefs. Over this past weekend, I listened to an interview where, these explorations that are taking place, explorations going to Mars and people going there, possibly not coming back. So it's some of the exciting stuff. It's exciting because that's what explorers did in the past. They went to places that they didn't know. If I just talked in the case of our industry now, the petroleum sector, everybody is looking. We are. And it's total leading into looking at alternative energy, solar being one, and we are very proud that we are a leader in that particular area. So, but that's providing other opportunities and other developments, and possibly there will be other startups as a result of that particular venture.
Thank you very much both for your time, Siyabulela Xuza and Dr. Gule.
Thank you, Andile.
Thank you, Andile. Let's make this Africa's tech century.
All right, you're on, buddy.